this library, and there's some construction going on with the coffee bar. So I wanted to work through some review problems with you. As you know, this exam is going to be concerned with material for modules 5 and 6. And I'm just going to keep scrolling here. We're not doing this as a webinar, so we don't need that. These test-taking tips are pretty useful. In particular, expect for the exam to take 2 hours. So if you only have 45 minutes, I would not recommend starting at that point. Try to find 2 hours of time that you can set aside to take this test. And unlike this webinar, unlike this video, which I'm recording in a very loud place, try to take your exam in a quiet place. And it's a really good idea to turn off other distractions. We might try to convince ourselves that they're not going to distract us, but they often end up being very distracting indeed. Make sure you have all the materials you need with you. Any notes you want to use, your physical or digital textbook, this exam review, anything you need. Think about each question, look at similar examples, and you'll be able to work through the exam questions, I would say, more accurately and a little faster. And this is really good advice. Be careful with truncating intermediate computations. If you're supposed to go to the nearest tenth, go to the nearest 10,000th. 3 or 4 more decimal places than the number requested. And just be careful about rounding. And of course, always read the directions carefully. And I wish you all the best. This is some of the vocabulary that I want you to be familiar with for Module 5. So remember that an outcome is the result of an experiment. And an experiment is an event that we can repeat over and over. A great example was tossing a single fair die. The sample space is all the possible outcomes of any particular experiment. An event is a collection of events from some probability study. And we call an unusual event one that has a low probability of occurring. And our book talks about that being 5 times out of 100 or 0.05 or 5%. But that's not a hard and fast rule. But if a test question asks you, would you consider this an unusual event? Consider if the probability is less than 0.05. That's how our book defines unusual. And if you hear me huffing and puffing, it's because I'm standing on a treadmill workstation. What can I say? I'm a nerd. I like to exercise. Now, if an event is impossible, it has probability 0. If an event is certain, it has probability 1. So if you're computing a probability and you get a number that is less than 0 or greater than 1, you have necessarily made a mistake. With permutations and combinations, remember that a permutation has n distinct objects and the repetitions are not allowed and the order matters. Whereas with a combination, there are n distinct objects, repetition is not allowed, and order is not important. So here I always think a great example is, wait, that's not what I want, cards. Card hands. If you get 3 aces and 2 kings, and someone else, and of course in a different game, gets an ace, a king, an ace, a king, a king, that's the same hand as long as they're the same suit and all such things. Whereas here, a great example to help you remember the difference is a committee of pres, vice pres, treasurer. So if you have someone, if you want to know how many ways can you select from a group of, say, 8 people, a president, vice president, and a treasurer, if a different person gets assigned president, that is a different situation. And so the order in which people are assigned matters. So this is the first few 4 problems on the exam. These are the concepts you're going to be looking at. And relative frequency, you can look at example 3 on page 258 of the text. Percent versus probability, this is, we'll talk more about that in a moment. And computing probabilities, we're going to talk about that. And then here are some good homework problems to refer back to. And computing OR probabilities, and we'll go through all these in a moment. So I will stop this video now, and then I'll make a video for little chunks so that you don't have to have too much trouble finding each video that you're looking for.